All right. Tired of people getting misled and stuff, and I'm gonna show you a couple examples of God's laws are still in effect. I'll show you specifically where He says uh, they're still in effect, and I'll give you examples of God's laws are still in effect, and His decrees, His commands, they're everlasting. Because if His punishments are everlasting, you better believe that. And His love is everlasting, and His mercy, His compassion, and His love is literally forever. So what do you think are His laws? His decrees and his commands, they're forever too. Those are the laws. Those are things we listen to, supposed to listen to actually. But some people don't. They'd rather make up their own idea of why not to follow it. But even though all this was here before any of us were born, it tells you that some of us are gonna stray. Like some of us are gonna be telling you not to follow some of this. Some people will tell you that you only need the New Testament. You don't need the Old Testament. Well, if you think about it, the Old Testament is probably has more information about what's gonna happen at the end than the New Testament does. Yeah, Revelations and has a whole bunch of info on the end times. Well, this literally the Old Testament is literally a history book and a life manual. Because this happened to real life people. You have to understand, this happened to real life people, people like you and me, flesh and blood, and many, many years ago. And that you have to realize that God says that every generation will know who He is. Even though it's not uh, every single family is going to know Him because God knows His people. And so if you really want to learn about God and you really love God, you will really look into all this. But here's just some examples. Today I know that farmers be work. Every person has to work to eat, and I know that every woman that gives birth today is having some labor pains. Whether it's like a small pain or even worse pain of labor. This is something that God said in the beginning. I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Whoa, that's still happening today. That's what God said. That's something that God said at His own words. He said to the woman, He said. That's what He told Eve. And let's see what He told Adam. Because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree which I commanded you, you must not eat. Okay, so God commanded them to do something, and they just did whatever they want to do. And God said, cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it, and all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground. From it you were taken. From dust you are, and to dust you will return. Well, I know a whole lot of people that are working just to eat, you know, and some of the work ain't easy. And this was in the very beginning. So I know that's everlasting right there. And you know what else is everlasting that God tells us? There's two deaths. The first death is when you die, I guess, from your human body. And the second death is either you're going, is pretty much what it says. The second death is hell. You're getting thrown in the pit of fire. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. But let's go to something even before that. The seventh day, Sabbath day. Whoa. By the seventh day, God had finished the work He had been doing. So on the seventh day, He rested from all His work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it He rested from all the work of creating that He had done. Wow. And what's the commandment? Oh, yeah. Remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. Well, this is in the beginning. Why did God tell Moses that, even though this was from the beginning? Well, it's because it's a command, and you have to follow it. And it clearly says what happens when you don't follow a command. He punished the first two people. But let's see what happens when you do follow a command. Let's take Abraham, for example. Y'all know the story of Abraham. God said, take your son, your only son who you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. You know, this was the same place that Jesus died. You know that it's crazy because God sent his only son to die for our sins. Literally the same place Abraham was going to send his, offer his son as a burnt offering. Jesus was crucified the same place that Abraham was going to do this. And what you'll know is that most of the New Testament will prophesize and will tell you, like, it'll give you a hint of what's going to happen later on. Well, some of y'all didn't know that. Yeah, well, this is what happens when you follow the Lord. Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Father. Yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two men went on together. Then when they reached the place God had told him, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac, laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand, took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not only withheld me from your son, your only son. Whoa. He was literally going to sacrifice his only son to God because Abraham held fast to God. He was going to do whatever God, no matter what God said, you know. And look, it was just a test. You'll realize that God says that if something happens, he's testing you. And just as quick as that, to stop you from doing something, God will stop you from doing that. Because it's a test. Most of the stuff we're doing this day is a test. You know? Let's see what it says. Abraham looked up there in a thicket. He saw a ram, caught it by its horns. He went over there, took the ram, and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Wow, to this day. Well, this happened in the beginning. This should have went away. Nah. You better realize that God is forever and everlasting. And God, it says God can do whatever he wants. I am who I am. You know, so you better remember that, because all this is still to this day. And this is probably the most numerous thing that is said by all the prophets that will happen if you listen to God. It says, the angel of the Lord called to Abraham and says, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and not have withheld your son, your only son, you will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. As the sand in the seashore, your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you obeyed me. I can tell you right now that there is a whole bunch of people that are trying to dig into the word, you know. Like, there's two types of people. There's people that will hear this and won't do nothing about it. And there's people who will hear this and they'll get some kind of curiosity and they'll start jumping in it slowly but surely, and then they'll be fully involved in it. There's only two types of people. You can't be halfway into this. You're either one or the other, you know. But let me take you to another example. Atonement for an unsolved murder. Whoa, no way. I thought atonement, you weren't supposed to make atonement. Well, let's see. This is for an unsolved murder. If someone is found slain laying in a field in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess, and it is unknown who the killer is, your elders and judges shall go out, measure the distance from the body to the neighboring towns. Then the elders of the town nearest the body shall take a heifer that has never been worked and has never worn a yoke, and lead it down to a valley that has not been plowed or planted, where there is a flowing stream. There in the valley they are to break the heifer's neck. The Levitical priest shall step forward, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister and to pronounce blessings in the name of the Lord. If you don't know what the Levitical priests are for, they're chosen that God, the Lord your God, has chosen them to minister, to pronounce blessings in the name of the Lord, and to decide all cases of dispute and assault. Whoa. Well, that's a good thing, because it says in here that God tells us to choose our leaders and our judges, because humans are too much that we should, look after ourselves, even though God does look after us. Then all the elders of the town nearest to the body shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley, and they shall declare, our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it done. Accept this atonement for your people Israel, whom have redeemed Lord, and did not hold your people guilty of the blood of an innocent person. Then the bloodshed will be atoned for you, and you will have purged yourselves from the guilt of shedding innocent blood, since you have done what is right in the Lord's eyes. I don't know who's telling you that you don't have to make an atonement, but you literally have to make an atonement to the Lord. Every time you sin, literally this is something that happened to an innocent person. And no one even saw what happened. No one saw what happened. There were towns that didn't even see what happened. And the town had to make atonement. You realize that every time you sin, you have to ask for forgiveness, right? Everybody knows that. And this is proof of it. You're making atonement. So this is something that, was in the beginning, and I'm pretty sure it still happens now, This is still going on till today. Till this day. But another thing that happened in the beginning that happens later on is when Jesus was hung on the cross, he said, God, why did you forsake me? Well, this is why that happened. This is exactly why that happened. I'm telling you right now, stuff in the Old Testament foreshadows stuff in the New Testament. If someone is guilty of a capital offense, is put to death, and their body is exposed on a pole, you must not leave the body hanging on the pole overnight. Be sure to bury it that same day, because anyone who is hung on a pole is under God's curse. You must not desecrate the land the Lord your God is giving you as inheritance. Whoa. Well, what happened to Jesus when he was hung on the cross? Right? There was a big old earthquake, and it got dark, and it literally got dark. Well, why was that? It's because they hung him on a pole. He was hanging on the cross. It says, you must not leave the body hanging on the pole overnight. Be sure to bury it that same day. No, they left Jesus hanging on that thing. And, this was in the beginning, and it was telling people of what to do, Well, let's go dive in a little further. Oh, yeah. This is in the Old Testament, saying that Jesus will be born. Let's start up over here, because you got to get all of it. When Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, was the king of Judah, King Rezin of Amra, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem, but they could not overpower it. Now the house of David was told, Aram allied itself with Ephraim, so the hearts of Uzzah and its people were shaken, as the trees of the forest were shaken by the wind. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, go out, you and your son, Shear-Jubah, to meet Uzzah at the end of the aqueducted upper pool on the road of Launderer's Field. Say to him, be careful, keep calm, and don't be afraid. Do not lose heart because of those two smoldering stubs of firewood. Excuse me. Because of the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram, and of the son of Reliah, Aram, Ephraim, Remaliah's son, have plotted your ruin, saying, Let us invade Judah, let us tear it apart, divide it among ourselves, and make the son of to be king over it. Well, what do you think is happening today in Israel? There's literally, it's literally cut in half, two smoldering stubs, and there's Israel, and then there's Palestine. Well, what some people don't know is that's rightfully Israel's, and the Palestinians just occupy it. That's literally the best word to say, is to occupy it. They're just staying there. You know, like, how would you say in America? People that stay at a house, but they're not living there. They're just staying, like, freeloaders or something. Not freeloaders, but there's a specific word. I'll think of it in a minute. But, yeah, that's literally what's happening in Israel. There's Muslims, which don't even believe the same thing that they do, you know, that we people that follow this do. They believe a whole nother thing, like a whole nother God, and it says, thou shalt not have no other gods. But, it says, let me continue. It will not take place, it will not happen, for the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is only Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people. The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is only Remaliah's son. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. Wow, that's pretty simple and, you know, point blank right there. Again, the people spoke to Azah, asked the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or in the highest heights. But Azah said, I will not ask, I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, hear now, you house of David, is it not enough to try the patience of humans? Will you try the patience of my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. What? So this was in the Old Testament, saying that there would be a virgin giving born literally to the Messiah. Well, no way, I didn't know that was in the Old Testament. Well, yeah, you better believe that. Everything in the Old Testament is literally foreshadowing what will happen in the future. Also in the New Testament. Let me keep going. This is probably the part where I wanted to get to the most. It's literally right before the book of John. Alright, this happens when Jesus is risen. Everybody knows the story. You know, there was women sent while they were wondering about this. Two men suddenly, you know, the women were in the tomb, right? The angel said, why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hand of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be risen again. Then they remembered his words. Wow. Well, this is in the New Testament. It did foreshadow that. Well, let's see. Let's see what else it says. It says, oh yeah, I'm gonna read it all so you can understand it. Now that same day, two of the men were going to a village called Imumes, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they were talking and discussing these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, what are you discussing together as you walk along? They stood still, their face downcast. So they were like upset. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there these days. So he's talking about, have you not realized that there was literally a guy that was supposed to be the Messiah? They literally put him on trial and killed him, and they're waiting to see if he comes back to life, because that's the sign he's the Messiah, you know? And Jesus asked, what things? About Jesus of Nazareth, they replied. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priest and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more is that the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb earlier this morning, but did not find his body. They came and told us that they had seen visions of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the woman said. They did not see Jesus. He said to them, how foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. But did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. So right down to Moses, till Solomon, till King David, till Jeremiah, till Isaiah, till Micah, till Daniel, the Lord explained to all of them every single thing that concerned God, or that concerned Jesus. Well, it had to have concerned God, because who sent Jesus? Jesus was the son of who? The Son of God. God sent his only son. Jesus didn't send himself. God sent his only son. And it says, as they were approaching the village to which they were going, Jesus continued as if they were going farther. But they urged him strongly, stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over. So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11, or the disciples, and those with them assembled together, saying, it is true, the Lord has risen and appeared to Simon. Then the two had told what had happened on the way, and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke bread. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said, peace be with you. He said, shalom. They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, why are you troubled? Why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and feet. It is myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. Jesus literally shows up and says, peace be with you. Peace be with you. And the disciples are so scared, because he just came out of nowhere, that they think he's a ghost. And the Lord says, look at my hands. He was crucified, and they had nails in his hands and feet. He said, look, I am flesh and blood just like you. I'm real as it gets. When he said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still not believe it because of the joy and amazement, he asked them, do you have anything to eat? They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He said to them, this is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that was written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms. Then he opened their minds so that they could understand the scriptures. He told them, this is what is written, the Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witness of all of these things. I am going to send you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high. Whoa. Literally, Jesus taught them At the beginning, with Moses and the prophets, he explained to them what was said in the scriptures concerning himself.